talking about SNL, the history, the mysteries, and all the hot impressions in between, breaking down all the numbers as well. In the favorite sketches with special guests, it's on the Saturday Night Network.
Yes, that is right. Welcome everybody on in to the Saturday Night Network for episode number 6 of season 50, our hot take show. My name is Jon Schneider from the SNN. So excited to be back with you for another week of SNL coverage, this time here to talk about the episode that was headlined by Bill Burr and Mk.gee. We are, of course, here as a presentation of LateNighter.com. We have a great panel with us. We have some amazing friends in the chat to talk through everything we saw here on this night at Saturday Night Live, which we all knew was going to be a wild week, one of the most fascinating weeks in a long time. It's just felt like a very long week since we were there last week for John Mulaney, but we are here and we're here to talk through everything we saw. So let me bring in my man, Bill Kenney is here. Bill, how are you?
John, I'm here. I'm excited to talk about one of these bottle episodes. We started this podcast 4+ years ago in COVID and Bill Burr and things like that. And there were a lot of times then that were, a historical moment for better or worse. And here we are again after an election and not knowing what to expect from the show. Some big swings tonight and interested to get into it. So yeah, happy to be here.
We only bring in Bill Burr during historic times. So I'm excited to get into his second episode hosting the show tonight, and joining us as well for the first time on a hot take show is the amazing Halle-Dowden-Parrott. Halle, how are you?
I'm super pumped to be here, John. Making my hot take show debut. There was a lot of kind of curiosity going into this week's episode. Crazy week all around in every aspect, and in times like that it's always really interesting to see how SNL is going to react and adapt to the circumstances of the world. So I'm really curious to hear y'all's opinions on things, get into all of it, but so glad to be here on such a night. A lot to talk about.
Yeah, a lot to talk about here. Obviously, Bill, we've been through a lot of different eras and arcs in SNL history. This was a very interesting one where we are coming off Donald Trump being elected for the second time as president of the United States, how SNL was going to cover it when they clearly last week made a statement that they are leaning in one direction, and that is not the direction that ended up materializing after this election. So it was fascinating to see how they were going to get into it. So we will talk about that cold open in just a moment with a lot of the SNL cast addressing us at home and Trump himself. But before we do, let me ask you, Bill, overall thoughts on the night, any headlines or hot takes that you want to kick off our show with?
I think it was... I feel like it was after 9/11. Now I know that. Hold on. No, let me. Can I finish? Can I finish, John? No,
sorry, I don't mean to laugh at that, but
let me just explain where I'm coming from with that. So not that I'm equating the two events, but after that, those first couple episodes after 9/11 were very evergreen sketches that we got, and I think that was what we got tonight. There was a lot of stuff that could have been in any time frame, any era, and I think that was what the goal was, to stay away from politics as much as possible outside of the cold open and weekend update. That's what they did. So I think that was accomplished in its own way.
Yes, I think if you go back to the Sean William Scott episode or something, past that Reese Witherspoon episode back in season 27, then yes, you may see some interesting writing choices. So I could see the parallels, like squint and see it a little bit, Bill. Halle, how are you feeling overall about the night? Any hot takes or headlines?
Overall, I don't have anything super glaring to say right off the top of my head, other than what a night for Emil Joachim. That was just sketch after sketch after sketch. I've been saying it since the start of this season. I was waiting for him to have that big episode where it was just going to be him all over the place. And I wasn't really expecting it to be this week, and yet it was. It just felt like the Emil characters and like appearances and sketches just kept coming and kept coming and kept coming, which was actually really delightful to see. I love it when a featured player gets an episode like that. So that was my headline for sure.
Yeah, that's interesting because I definitely agree. I think that is a really good headline for the night, including, and I would throw Ashley Padilla in that. We'll talk about her sketch at the end of the night, but we've seen a lot of Jane Wickline through the first few episodes, not as much as we saw Emil on the update desk, but definitely nothing from Ashley. So I really felt like they gave some chances to some of the other cast members here. And, that was emblematic of tonight for me. What I really felt walking away from this episode is that, this was a tough week for the show, really tough, right? And, they went through this in 2016 where I think even more in 2016, leaned into Hillary's going to get elected. This is what's going to happen. And we're all going to be dancing around Studio 8H. And then Chappelle hosts, and it's a really fascinating episode. They made a lot of good decisions, a lot of controversial decisions, and some bad decisions. I think that what happened tonight is that I almost feel like the SNL writers had their backs against the wall. They were challenged tonight in a way that I don't know they've ever been challenged in modern times to come up with stuff tonight that really, really worked for people, because everyone had the pitchforks out at SNL tonight. If you're on the right, you're just ready to be like, we got you now, guys. And if you're on the left, I don't think you have faith that SNL has the ability to cover any of this. And what I felt like is that they came up with really inspired writing tonight. Maybe not every sketch worked to its fullest extent. Not saying it was the best episode of the season, but I really felt like they took chances tonight, and they wouldn't have done that if they didn't have their backs up against the wall. So that's how I'm feeling on a first watch coming out of tonight. And I'd love to get into the reasons why when we dive into some of these sketches. So let's head over to the cold open, where we open up. It's been a few times we've seen this over the years where we open up in the studio and we get some cast members talking directly to us at home. And we see Bowen, Ego, Keenan, and Heidi talking about the shocking and horrifying results of the election that they didn't expect, and all of their concerns about rights and privileges being taken away from people that they support. But they want to know, and they want to tell Donald Trump at home that we've been with you all along, and we've never wavered in our support of you, even when others have doubted you. In comes Marcelo, Sarah, and Colin Jost appearing in the cold open, which I thought was a nice touch. About how they hate the lamestream media and that made him look foolish. And if you're making a list of your enemies, we should not be on that list. If anything, only the 3 new cast members should be on that list. The 3 disgusting new cast members, Jane, Ashley, and Emil. In comes hot jacked Trump. So for the first time, we get a glimpse into what we may see the future of the James Austin Johnson Trump impression with the hot jacked Trump. Dana Carvey in the building, not playing Biden, but switches over to the dark side. He's now playing Elon Musk here. And we get a little bit of alluding to the young men, or YMCA, that Trump plays at a lot of his rallies. So this was a very interesting cold open that we saw here, Bill. How do you feel like SNL handled the moment?
Well, this was what I was most tense about, in the micro of the week leading up to SNL. How are they going to handle the cold open? And that's what we do when we're super fans of the show. When something happens that's either tragic or controversial, how is SNL going to open the show? And I did not know all the nonsense online about is Maya going to come out and sing Hallelujah? No, of course not. Like that was never going to be an option. As similar as this might feel to 2016, it's not the same. And that's what you kind of alluded to, John. I liked where this went. From the beginning, I wasn't really sure, but then we got some really stellar performances. I love Ego in this, talking about waking up screaming in the middle of the night, but in joy. She's screaming in joy. Jost's turn on this is great, trying to throw Che under the bus, even though he's not even on stage. And Zsa, as he's leaving the stage after he does Hot Jack Trump, and he rolls his eyes in just such a way. The audience caught it, And it was really, really funny that he's like, now I'm going to have to do this for the next 4 years. So there were a lot of really good performances in a no-win situation for them in this cold open.
Hallie, I felt like there was a lot of landmines that SNL was trying not to step on this week. Do you think that they pulled this off?
I think that they did. I was in the same boat as Bill. I spent kind of the entire week. That was the elephant in my mental room. It's like, what is this week's cold open going to look like? I was like, I don't know that I want to see a ton of political impressions right now. That's been the whole week. How are they going to address this? And I think I was concerned that if they tried to avoid the landmines, it wasn't going to be as funny as I wanted it to be. And somehow they managed to dodge that obstacle. It felt somehow like a refresh. It felt new in a way that I didn't expect it to. Getting to see kind of a different twist on James Austin Johnson's Trump impression was a lot more needed to me than I thought it was. Made me feel a little bit better about seeing that so much in the future. It felt almost refreshing in a way. Like I was able to exhale, that it wasn't too heavy. It acknowledged the elephant in the room, and it did kind of dodge those landmines without feeling too intentional about it.
Yeah, I really feel like this is everything I could have wanted. I've been preaching on these shows that like I want to see cast members play themselves more on the show. I feel like that this is an era where they really haven't done it enough, and when they have done it, it's been overtly explaining their view on a situation. And I think that this was the actual balance of what they needed to do, where we know how most of these cast members feel in the current moment, but they did it through the lens of comedy. It was comical that we all know that they may not have voted for this guy, but now they're worried that they're going to be on some sort of list. And I think that they treating it with that approach, I think it works for everybody. And like I really want to credit, and as we get into the week and talk about who wrote these segments, we'll talk about that on the roundtable and stuff like that. But I really have to credit some of the writing and producing for this cold open, because I just think it struck a really good balance of you at home getting to know each of these cast members as people without feeling like they are preaching their views to you and saying, or imposing their views to you and saying, hey, I think that we should have voted for Kamala, and this is how everyone should feel about it. I don't think they did that tonight. I think you could have been a Trump voter, or maybe a Republican who doesn't support Trump, and watched tonight's cold open and felt good about what you saw. So I really think that they walked a very tight rope and they nailed it. And it's been a long time since I've been able to say that about the show. So I'm really proud of the show and the way that they handled this tonight. So overall, I'm hoping that this is the start of some stronger political writing that we could see on the show. So let them take this moment and be inspired to produce things that are more creative like this. All right, let's get into what we get from Bill Burr here, coming back, as Bill alluded to, for his second time hosting the show. The last time we saw him was in season 46, episode 2. And if you weren't following the show so closely a few years back, that was smack dab in the middle of COVID. He comes in, everyone is still wearing masks, not able to rehearse their sketches. They're talking, when they're rehearsing, they're doing it over Zoom. He's only in 5 segments in the entire night. It is a very weird dynamic for being in an SNL episode. And he was a great host that didn't really get a full shot, and now we get him here on the show, and he does his monologue where he says it's nice to be here on such a week, talks about having the flu a little bit and trying to figure out who gave it to him, the whole bit about the shoeless cowboy on the airplane near him, says when is constructive criticism coming. He talks about some jokes about women, and then and then when talks about Trump a little bit, talks about him, that this should have been over a few months ago because he got shot then, and then he survived because of the herky-jerky movements that Trump typically makes. Did a little bit on Trump being happiest by working behind the counter at McDonald's, and then ended with some falling asleep at 3 a.m. jokes. So really all over the map in terms of a stand-up Bill. He could have done all election stuff, but that's probably not Bill Burr's style. So how'd you feel about how he weaved that into his stand-up set tonight in the monologue?
This was pretty good. I don't know that. I mean, this is his style of comedy, and I'm okay with that. I don't know that we were ready. You know, we just talked about this cold open that didn't go into the politics as much and kind of let it breathe. And, you know, to start making jokes about ladies being owned to because they're wearing pantsuits, I don't know that we're there yet. I certainly, I laughed a little bit about the, you know, whoring it up somewhere between Applebee's and your dad didn't stick around long enough. Like that was a funny joke, but I think it's a funnier joke maybe a month or so from now after we've had a you know, a little time to deal with this. But yeah, I mean, the Trump at McDonald's joke was very funny that he had never looked happier in his life. And he was like the Grinch coming down the hill with the presents. That made me laugh. But yeah, I'm not mad at it. And this is who he is. You know, it's almost in the vein of Chappelle, where you know what you're going to get. So you know, if you're easily offended by things like that, then you probably shouldn't be watching his monologue at this moment in time. But yeah, overall, it was okay.
Hallie, how did you feel about the monologue tonight? I just got to step up for 1 second. Bill and Hallie, just take this, and Hallie will get your thoughts on the monologue, okay?
Sounds good. I can talk about the monologue for sure. I did not love this monologue, and I didn't go into it thinking I was going to. In reality, I had my expectations not super high because I know kind of Bill Burr's stand-up style, and I also know that stand-up is not a one-size-fits-all situation. There are different styles and types of stand-up that people like. I went into it knowing not really my kind, not from a objective good or bad standpoint, but just didn't really resonate with me. I don't love the delivery of just like guy talking really loudly at an audience. Not really my favorite kind of stand-up. Some people love it. But I also completely agree with Bill. It was stuff that probably would have gotten a bigger laugh out of me a little bit later down the line. But my initial knee-jerk reaction was just kind of like, oh, whoa, okay, we're there. We're going there right now already. So I do think it wasn't a bad monologue. It just didn't resonate with me the way that other stand-up monologues have. And I don't know if that's just because of the overall mood of the week, or generally my thoughts on Bill Burr's kind of stand-up style. But it kind of was a big dip from the cold open for me.
My thing is that I wish that he either did nothing to do with the election or he leaned into it completely. Like, I feel like doing a mix of both was sort of like jarring for me, where I was trying to get like a very humorous take on what happened. And also he was just talking about like falling asleep at 3 a.m. watching the television and Shaquille O'Neal. Like, it didn't, like, there was so much here that was jam-packed into this. And I know like Bill Burr is a fantastic stand-up and you can go watch him do an hour set and you just be amazed at what he could do. But like, I think that I think that this was a 7-minute set that felt like a lot of stuff crunched into 7 minutes. And the rapid fire topic changes didn't fully hit for me in terms of stuff, but there was a lot of like little things in this that I liked. So I don't know if that makes sense, but that's there's parts that I liked altogether on a macro level. I'm not sure that it completely worked for me. Let's get into the first sketch of the night, though. Let's talk about Firehouse. So this is a sketch where we get Bill and Emil and Marcelo and Andrew, and they work at a firehouse. Jane Boston Johnson comes in as the lead and introduces Heidi, who's a mental health specialist who's there to talk to them about their stressful jobs. And Bill, who's playing Ralphie, is one of the people who has to do this like test, a typical test that you would see where you look at something and to say like what you see. And he keeps seeing, instead of like a butterfly, he ends up seeing cartoon characters doing all sorts of crazy things. And ultimately, he is awarded with the Craziest Man in Boston award based on all of the wild things that he is seeing here. So we'll get into it. Hallie, what did you think about Firehouse?
This was the highlight of the night for me. It was maybe the hardest I've ever laughed from my couch watching an episode of SNL. And I think a lot of that was just pure shock value. It was formulaic to the point where as they were approaching Bill's turn to talk about what he saw, I knew he was going to see something weird. I knew that was going to be the whole bit. nothing could have prepared me to see the wedding lingerie Mike Wazowski. That took the words out of my mouth. And I do find sometimes that when the humor is based entirely in like something being shocking, it's less impactful to me. But for some reason, it was a type of sketch where I was like, how on earth is this something that I'm seeing with my own two eyes? Like what has happened in humanity that this is a thing that exists, and why is it so funny? I thought the sketch was gonna lose me by the end too, because by this third or fourth time he was talking about what he was seeing, it was kind of like, not as funny as the first Mike Wazowski. And then they called back to it at the end, tied it up in a bow for me. That callback to Mike Wazowski finished the sketch pretty strong for me, brought me back in at the end, and this was a really strong start to the sketch run of the episode for me. Definitely the peak.
Bill, how'd you feel about this one?
Yeah, I think I'm pretty much in the same camp as Hallie here. Like this, I felt this is the direction I wanted to see the show go in. You've taken care of the cold open, you've taken care of the monologue, and now we go into something so absurd and silly. And Bill really played this part well. There were some really funny moments in this, and there was not a ton of escalation. But I do like, as we got further into it, that the characters became more ridiculous. Like the character from Halo being comforted from the dead wife from Up. Like, okay, yeah, we've really moved on now. And to tie it up at the end with Mike Wazowski coming back in with the dog from Bluey. Yeah, I mean, this was pretty funny. I like that they did cut back to the board to show that it was actually a butterfly or whatever the Rorschach test was. So it was only in his mind, and we got a very clear view of that. So yeah, I think this worked really well and gave me good feelings for the rest of the night.
Yeah, so I thought this was pretty good. I did like what I was seeing here. I felt like Bill was the perfect person for this. Like a lot of hosts will not sell this as well as Bill. I love that he, they talk about this being for a stressful job, but he really works at the front desk. So like there's nothing stressful about it. And he's just like one of those guys that just like cartoon porn. So this is, so for me, I thought that there was some good stuff here. And then I found out from our dress rehearsal report that this had a completely different ending at dress rehearsal that was changed for the live show. So in the dress rehearsal version of the sketch, we get a callback at the end of the sketch and learn that the whole sketch was an LSD hallucination from Bill. Bill is actually talking to a broomstick who was Heidi and not a mental health specialist, and nobody else is in the room since, and then the captain walks in, James Austin Johnson, and changes a calendar that says like days since LSD hallucination sign. So the whole thing was like one giant trip for him, as opposed to them doing the craziest man in Boston thing at the end. The theory was that perhaps there was some blocking with trying to get all the cast members out of the sketch and it didn't work exactly the way they wanted to. But Bill, do you think that would make the sketch better for you, worse for you? How do you feel about those changes?
I think it's better this way. Yeah, I can see where the blocking wouldn't work for something like that unless you had something on pre-tape. But no, I think it was fine just the way it was, having it in reality as opposed to a complete LSD trip.
Hallie, what about you? How do you feel like the changed ending affects your view of the sketch?
I'm in the same boat as Bill. I think that keeping it grounded in reality, as opposed to it having the effect of when you're watching a movie and then at the end it's like, oh, and it was all a dream. You're like, oh, great. So what was the point of that? I think it had more of an effect to be set in that real place and to be implied as something that is actually happening. So I'm really glad they went with this ending. I think it definitely wouldn't have been as high on my ranking had it had the original dress ending.
Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, it's fun because it changes the perspective on the psychology of the quote unquote crazy one in the sketch. Like our version that we saw on the show is that Bill Burr is just like a horn dog that sort of just has like a fetish for cartoons. But in the other version, he's like a druggie. So it's just a very different look at the sketch. In this version of the sketch, I don't mind it, especially when we're talking about sketch placement and the tone of the evening, where we're going to start off with something like super light and fun. I think just having sort of like a Ralphie who works at the front desk has like a weird kink, I think is probably the right tone that you're trying to set for the episode. So I'm cool with what we ended up getting here. And then we're going to transition over to the second edition. It's sort of the third edition because Mk.gee Day's character had appeared a first time before Bill Burr's, but it's the second time we get to see Bill Burr's Sean, his Boston guy, who is at the Buffalo Wild Wings. We get to see different cast members: Marcelo, Heidi, Emil, Devin, all as different football fans. Bill is a Patriots fan, naturally, and he's there at Buffalo Wild Wings to watch a Pats game. When he talks about, he needs to be there because his wife says he brings tension to the house. And in comes his son, Mikey Dewey, who said, "Dad, let's go," and is carrying, I guess, Sean is now a grandpa. And we get to see the daughter or son there. And lots of fun jokes back and forth here. But yeah, I mean, the tension between Dewey and Sean was the real masterpiece of this Sam Adams sketch we got in season 46. Bill, were you excited to have this one come back?
Yeah, I think it was at the top of everyone's list that at the beginning of the season that we would get to see Mikey as Dewey again, because that's a quintessential Mk.gee Day character. No, this was fine. I'm tongue in cheek, of course. Yeah, I do wonder if Casey Affleck and Bill Burr are related in this scenario. But yeah, this was okay. I barely remembered the Sam Adams one, to be honest. I did get the Dunkin' Donuts vibe, the Casey Affleck vibe, much more from this one than I did the Sam Adams. But yeah, the play between them and the rest of the characters like Heidi and Emil and Devin, trying to keep it this lighthearted fast food restaurant, Buffalo Wild Wings, and you've got this real anger going on with these Bostonians, and of course it's a Patriots fan. They're all like that. Sorry, I'm just kidding. Yeah, this was fine. This was okay.
Yeah, I think there was just the true part of the previous Sam Adams sketch that I think everyone took away was just that that building tension between Mk.gee Day and Bill Burr's characters to the point where they're fighting in the store, and it's like, is today the day you're going to actually swing at your old man? And that to me, it was something I just never forgot it. And was one of the best parts of early 46. So I love that, this had that at the end as well. It hit that same, paint by numbers tone, but they did it in a different way, Halle, where it's like, yeah, you forgot your kid, forgot something, Father of the Year. So there's some fun stuff here. Did you enjoy this one, Halle?
I liked it from as everyone's talked about, kind of building upon what we've already seen, and just the tension building throughout the episode, but also just as someone who has spent probably too much time in Buffalo Wild Wings across the country watching football, it was kind of real. That is Buffalo Wild Wings behavior if I've ever seen it. So I love that. As Bill said, of course, it was a Patriots fan. I think I put that down in my notes. But yeah, I don't really have too much of a sway one way or another on this one. Other than that, I love a football sketch. And I thought this was a really, really well executed sketch on Mikey's part, for sure. He really kind of was a star of this sketch for me and was the driving factor that kept it going on top of just Buffalo Wild Wings vibes. It's too real.
It was really good. I felt like they hit some really good tones here because it's supposed to be a Buffalo Wild Wings commercial. So you get all of the shots of the other cast members, watching. I don't know if they're supposed to be at different Buffalo Wild Wings or they're at this one as well, rooting their own teams. But I almost looked at it like they're around the country watching their teams playing. Actually, no. Well, there was Devin was with Emil in this one, and they were treating. Yeah. So perhaps they were together in some sense. But they're all calm and doing their regular lines to camera, and I just love the contrast always of Bill being the sloppy drunk behind them, filling up the beer and all of that stuff. So for me, this really does work. And I think that Ashley was really good in this sketch, especially at the end where she's holding the kid, like just in shock about how like Mikey just left without the kid. So I think this hit some notes that I really love tonight. I think this was a great sequel to the Sam Adams sketch that we got in 46. And these are really fun to watch back to back, I'm sure. Next up, we got Power Drive Records. So Bill, and again, a big night for Emil. So Emil comes in to talk to his dad and asks him, what he's doing. He's in the garage. He's listening to some 80s sex rock. So it's all about living fast, dying young, doing sex. And they're going to listen to the best of Snakeskin, hits of sex rock. And we get what I assume is at a different stage, naturally, probably like on home base. We're going to get Sarah, Andrew, James Austin Johnson, and Will Steven on the drums performing some sex rock anthems. 3 mid-40s guys, Jewish guys from Long Island, and they're going to play different songs as Bill talks to his son and it tries to explain why this music absolutely rocked in the 80s. And there's some undertones here of the reason that he liked this so much is because he got molested. and that is the reason. And so Emil's like, you should really go to therapy. Like, that's what we do now. We go to therapy. But instead, in the 80s, you didn't go to therapy. You listened to sex rock. So Hallie, did you like the Power Drive Records sketch?
There were parts of it that I really loved. I think that the music part itself, the Dismukes, James Austin Johnson, and Sarah combo, an elite combo to me overall. But I thought they really sold this. They really went into it. Dismuke's performance was so bonkers. He fit the role so well. I loved that part. Separately, I loved the Emil kind of begging the dad to go to therapy, which feels like it was kind of a common thread throughout the night. There was a lot of dad and a lot of therapy. I don't know what that says about this episode, but I thought that part was hilarious. But together they felt kind of disconnected to me. And I don't know if that was just a me thing, but I liked both parts individually more than I liked the flow of the kind of story of the sketch as it progressed. I think it was kind of a little bit too whiplashy for me to be like, oh, so now he's telling the dad to go to therapy because he got molested. I love this performance from Andrew Dismukes. It was a lot happening at once, which isn't always a bad thing, but I just felt like it could have been connected better to me.
Okay, Bill, how do you feel about it?
Oh, I wanted to love this one so much. I'm child of the 80s. I loved hair metal. And
Were you a sex rock guy?
I was not a sex rock guy. I do love the reference to Sex on an Escalator. I mean, that's Love in an Elevator, if you don't know, from Aerosmith, that they were referencing there. But the pieces didn't all come together. Yes, exactly. I appreciate the big swing they took, and seeing Jajmukes together with Sarah was fantastic. But I did get a laugh out of Bill saying, you referenced the molesting, but our parents didn't know where we were. Where we were. We were getting molested. So that was funny to me. But yeah, it felt a little jumbled and could have been a little more cohesive, in my opinion.
Yeah, see, I didn't feel that way. I felt like the parts did match together. It felt that like they almost felt like you needed to go back to Bill and Emil to be able to give us a break before like the next. The real like beauty of the sketch was the performers, right? And in order to do that, I think you have to give them that separation where you just go back to the other shot. So I liked it. I think if they would have played it really straight and there wasn't that like undertone of, okay, like Bill Burr's character here has some like real issues, which seems to be a theme for the night, that he's just an angry guy with issues. But I felt like introducing them in that way really worked. This is not the type of sketch that we typically see in this era. And I really liked it because I felt like it was refreshing to get to that whole like, okay, now we're going to introduce the band and they're going to go do this. And I feel, just to see James Austin Johnson, Andrew Dismukes, and Sarah Sherman as a trio up there is something I think the fans have been asking for a really long time. These are the three performers who are probably the boldest performers we have on the cast right now that are willing to just take something as far as they possibly can, just to get the joke across. And I think that they did a lot of that tonight. And I just, weaving in those 80s references, it was maybe a little quick to catch on the first shot. Maybe this is the type of sketch you really enjoy on the second shot. But even the whole, when they're singing Tear It Down about the Berlin Wall and singing Mr. Gorbachev, Tear down your panties, girl. I think there was a lot of really good stuff here. So for me, I really like this. And I'm really thrilled that this one got on the show. Let's talk about the janitor. So here we go. Emil again is talking with Bowen at MIT, and we get to the Fourier equation that is left on the wall or on the chalkboard by Bowen Yang, hoping that some student will come in and eventually solve it. But in comes Michael Longfellow playing Donnie the janitor, who walks in and starts solving it right away. And we think that this is going to be some moment where we get this genius janitor who has figured out how to solve the equation, and maybe we'll end up getting a scholarship to MIT. But as he is solving the equation, he's interrupted by Andrew, another janitor, playing Ron, saying, "Hey, what are you doing in here?" Then Bowen walks back in. We get some fun back and forth there. Bill Burr ends up walking in and complaining about why aren't they cleaning up the barf on the floor, as they refer to it, and lots of jokes about that. And then Keenan, who's playing the dean, ends up coming in and is also very excited about him solving the equation, only to step and slip in what we see on the floor. James Austin Johnson eventually comes out of the supply closet, and turns out that he is the culprit. So, Bill, how did you feel about the janitor?
I overthink these things too much. I guess that's why we're here, right? How did this huge pile of barf, as they called it, how was this in the classroom the entire time while this class was there? After I got past that point, this was really, really funny to me. Even though we're spoofing a 25-year-old movie, that's okay. If you do it well, that's fine. I really enjoyed Zhazh as the pseudo Robin Williams, very low key. I would love to see more of that in a proper setting. I think that was a really good impression that we didn't get to see enough of, because he comes in as it's kind of the button at the end. But yeah, there were some really good performances from everybody in this, and it just got sillier and sillier as people are slipping on the barf. He's trying to mop it up. They've got the Roomba in the corner of the room. Like there was a lot of really funny stuff going on here. So after I got past my initial trepidation, I did enjoy this one a lot.
Hallie, did you like this one as much as Bill?
So I have a bit of a weird perspective on this one, just because I am one of the weak people of the world who has a very hard time watching anything with vomit involved. I spent most of my time watching this sketch in kind of a defensive position, ready to be like, I can't. I thought I was going to hate it because of that. I typically find any sort of gross barf humor to not be my thing, because I just don't do well with that stuff. It's a weakness of mine. I've tried to get over it to no avail. But that aside, did like this a lot more than I was expecting to. I thought it was such a Longfellow role, which I love. Always will give applause to anything that utilizes Michael Longfellow in a good way. I loved that aspect of it. I kept thinking, surely this is the last person who's going to come in and talk about this barf on the floor. And somehow the story of the barf continued to evolve beyond what I thought imaginable. So even though I could barely watch this with entirely open eyes without getting anxious about barf all over the place, and even though I did think it was kind of predictable, every time someone walked, I was like, oh, someone's going to slip on the barf. And then 2 seconds later, they did. I still found it to be a pretty good use of a gross type of humor, which I don't often think is very effective. I have to give them their flowers where they're due.
I agree. So my fiance has like a metaphobia, so she can't like look at anything like this and just like really just like. So I'm like I'm trained to like whenever I see something like this on TV to just be like like no, don't look. And so I know exactly what you're talking about, Hallie. But you know, for me, just watching this as like a pure comedy sketch, it's sort of like it looked so fake, and like I could maybe move past that to enjoy what was happening here, because I do think that the real beauty of the sketch is in the seriousness of the janitor being able to solve the equation here, blended with the idea that like everyone is so grossed out that they've stepped in it or that the Roomba has moved it around, and that how can the guy who is such a secret genius to be able to solve the equation be so stupid as to mop a carpet. And that balance here, I think what was beautiful about the writing in this sketch. So for me, it definitely like it had a hill to climb, but it climbed it and it worked for me. So I'm happy with this one. Okay, next up we get Calling Dad. So a sketch where Andrew and Devin are just finished playing pickleball, and they sit down and they talk, and they said, you know, we're going to call our dads. We haven't called our dads in a while. So Devin calls Keenan, and Andrew calls Bill Burr. And it's this emotional scene where we get to see you know, some fun moments where, you know, they're talking to their dads about how they never called, and they say, you know, how's it going? And naturally dad's going to be like, oh, we're good. No, but how are you doing? And we get to see Keenan get emotional. And then, you know, great line from Bill Burr. Oh, that's nice. Well, I'll let you go. And, they go back and forth. And there's a lot of really good writing here where Andrew, to me, the Andrew Bill call is the one that I want to focus on, where Andrew is trying to talk to his dad, and his dad's trying to explain how he is, but he keeps using metaphors because fathers and sons can't always speak to each other the way that other relationships can. And this was a sketch that, frankly, we do not see enough of on SNL. Something that is, you know, is able to like pull at the heartstrings, be set in a real life scene. So this is like the slice of life that we don't get enough of in this era, mixed with some real comedic moments. So Hallie, how did you feel about Calling Dad?
I really liked this one, and not necessarily from a comedy perspective. It wasn't the type of thing that I found myself laughing at, but it tugged at the heartstrings and it seemed really real. And like you said, I feel like that's a really good angle that we don't get very often. I found it to be kind of very sweet and funny enough for it to make sense in the episode. But more than anything, I just found it to be very like authentic and relatable and cute, for lack of a better word. And I don't think that is necessarily a bad thing at all. I think there are sketches where it's not funny, but it's emotional in a way that doesn't really make sense within the episode. But this one was just funny enough to me that it blended in well, while being like a kind of refreshing emotional break to be like, wow, parents, man, that's how they be. So this one was kind of a sleeper hit for me. I didn't laugh, but I really loved it.
This is definitely one of my favorite sketches of the season so far. And I want to point out what Nigel said in the chat, saying this was great and we never get Father's Day episodes. So this helped fill a big void. And I wrote that down as I was watching the show. I said, there's not enough SNL dad sketches. I know, because every time we get to a Mother's Day episode, we always curate our best mother sketches, our Mother's Day related sketches. And because SNL never airs in June, we never get to talk about father sketches. But to me, this is like maybe one of the best ones that they've ever done. And it's hard to name many father related sketches, but for me, this was I don't know why this came out this week, but again, like I go back to my theory about like really being pushed to be inspired to write something different here. And it's just over the last few years of covering the show and covering this era of the show, we just haven't seen a lot of sketches like this. And it was so nice that they tried it this week. So Bill, how did you feel about it?
Yeah, I love this. In a week of throwbacks, in many different forms on SNL, this was the throwback of all throwbacks. It's not going for the gut laugh. It's not going for the joke necessarily. It's just there to kind of, you know, it's our buzzword. We say it all the time, slice of life. And it's true. Like, this is something that almost anybody can relate to. And to have this was great comedic performances in a very subtle way by everybody involved in this. I love the when Keenan's talking about the Eagles, and the Eagles have been going to a lot of funerals lately. It's just they're unwrapping that onion to get to the middle of this. I really enjoyed this a lot. It's something that we sorely lack even in the last 25 years of SNL, not just the last few years. So glad to see that it made it in this week.
Yeah, and I just really want to double down on the point that like this is a sketch that had a message, which was that like sons and dads like maybe don't talk to each other enough, or when they do talk to each other, they can't talk about real things. They have to use metaphors to be able to have those conversations. But it is all layered, and this maybe only works for us here or you super fans of the show who are watching our podcast, in knowing that there is not a lot of comedic there's not a lot of sketches out there that are like this. So the fact that it doubles up that these things do happen, but there's not a lot of media that covers it in that way, I think lends to a really brilliant segment of the show that we got here tonight. So so happy that this one made it on. Like this was great for me. A lot of back-to-back great stuff here. Let's talk about Mk.gee, who was a name that I don't think a lot of people knew coming into this episode. But he performs ROCKMAN and Alesis, I believe, are the names of the two songs that we got to see on the show tonight. Crazy voice there on Mk.gee in terms of just like the sound that is not a sound that we typically get from a lot of our performers nowadays. But I also felt like in a night where sketches felt extremely throwbacky, to get a performer out there who is not like, he may be popular in a certain segment, but he's not like mainstream popular the way that some musical acts have been on the show the last few years, where people are just like lining up in the streets to go see them. So I thought it was really cool for SNL to introduce a performer like Mk.gee to a national audience in the way that they did tonight. Halle, did you enjoy his performances?
I was in the same boat. I was not familiar with Mk.gee at all. So this was kind of my raw introduction to him. I definitely think overall, I liked his music and his sound, but I think it may have been the type of performance that is not completely made better by the SNL environment and the SNL kind of like production area. I think I'm going to go and listen to more of his music, but I think it takes a really specific type of performance to bring up the energy in an episode. And the energy in this episode kind of felt like it was not necessarily bad, but kind of lurking around a middle to low energy perspective, not in terms of quality, just purely energy and where the audience was at. And it was not a bad music performance by any means, but it didn't really do anything for the energy of the show. It kind of felt like it was just a continued line of where the energy was at, and then we went right into Weekend Update. And that's just kind of how both musical performances felt to me. I enjoyed them, but didn't really sway the energy one way or the other.
I thought it was cool that we had Mk.gee on in a night where we had that sketch talking about the 80s sex rock. Not that Mk.gee is 80s sex rock, but like I could have seen Mk.gee in that sketch with Sarah and Jaj and Andrew, and that would have been kind of fun there. But yeah, I mean, like I said, we don't get a lot of performers like him on the show. He did remind me a little bit of like the 1975 that we got a couple times on the show, sort of like that sound there, but more solo performer versus band. Bill, did you enjoy Mk.gee?
I did. We this season on SNL, we've had banger after banger, legendary musical guests. So to kind of go back to where it all began, where you'd have musical guests come on that not everybody knew, and Sun Ra. Yeah, that's a perfect. How did you pull up Sun Ra, man? That's 1978 right there, buddy. This I like when they do this, because 3, 4, 5 years from now, if he blows up, like you can say, hey, I saw him on SNL before I knew any of his music, before I bought any of his albums. So I enjoyed his performances. It was again very throwback. So yeah, I liked it a lot.
Yeah, I'm sure we're gonna get some comments on the YouTube video being like, "You guys are idiots. You don't know McGee. Like McGee's the most popular person in the world." But yeah, not we don't know everybody. But I think it's really cool as SNL being a lens into the current culture, and in season 50, being introduced to a new performer like this, I think is like a throwbacky as well. So that was awesome tonight. Okay, let's talk about Weekend Update. This is definitely one of the more anticipated Weekend Updates in a while, as we were very curious as to what Jost and Che were going to say. So we get the opening line from Colin Jost about Democrats actually don't know how to rig an election. They took a long look in the mirror, and they are planning to elect Biden again in 2028. We get Michael.gee, who has resorted to drinking again. He last did this right towards probably partway through 46. When after that election and during COVID was going on, we got to see Michael.gee do this bit. And he talks about how Trump was so far ahead, they put in Bronny James. So some fun jokes there. And then we lead into a couple of features that we have on the update desk. First, we get Ego Wodem as a woman who can't find something in her purse. So she's looking for, we don't know what, but in comes out a goldfish, a ballot from Pennsylvania, guns, birth control, an even smaller purse for the nighttime. Hallie, how'd you feel about what Ego did at the update desk tonight?
I loved this, John. I felt like it was one of the first things in the episode that felt very relatable to me personally. I think it's a very quintessential experience for a lot of women to be kind of outside of a bar digging through a tote bag with the speed of 1,000 horses trying to find your ID, and instead finding like 1,000 pack of Band-Aids and every item that the world could ever have. I experience this every day as an avid tote bag carrier. So this was one of the highlights of the episode for me personally. Her pulling out the gun and the ballot from Pennsylvania was so funny. I thought the ballot part was tied it into current events in a way that I wasn't expecting it to. It didn't seem like something that was super topical, and then it became something. My cat just jumped up. Sorry about that. But that was such a seamless and funny tie-in to the election, the hot topic of the week. So this was one of my favorite recent update appearances from Ego, and a highlight of the episode for me.
I agree. I think that the ballot from Pennsylvania thing is the thing that makes this pass. For me, without that, I would sort of be like, do we need that this week? Like, is there something that we could have done else? Because Ego's fantastic, and as a performer, she always crushes at the update desk. I would venture to say that on the cast right now has the highest hit rate at the update desk. But it was for sure the ballot from Pennsylvania thing that took this over the top for me. Bill, did you like it?
Yeah, what's up, girl? Yeah, I like this a lot. Ego has just been so great. And as not as someone who carries a tote bag, but someone who is married to someone who carries a tote bag and can never find anything in it, I can relate kind of symbiotically. Yeah, this was really funny. I did enjoy a lot of the stuff that she was pulling out of there. The maracas, like how did that get in there? The smaller purse, and yeah, this was really good for me.
Yeah, this was fun. And then we get to see the return of Kenan Thompson's Willie character for the first time since season 46 episode. A lot of season 46 talk, but for the first time in a few years, Willie has returned to the update desk. And this felt like one of those things that was like, let's write a Willie. We know that people are going to like it, so we'll have it come back. But for the 10th time, he is at the update desk. First premiered in 2014, back when Jost and Che were just starting out on the desk. And we get Willie coming back here. So were you happy to see Che's neighbor Willie, Bill?
Yeah, John, I think you should have opened the show playing the SNL Stats theme song, because there's a lot of 46 kicks here. Yeah, I mean, where has Willie been? Has he been hiding since the vaccine came out? Because like we haven't seen him since Christmas of 2020. there were some really funny jokes here for somebody who we know, we know the beats of this character, even though it's been a long time. The hiding in the old refrigerator. You never played hide? But yeah, him and Che play off each other so well, especially when he's in this character. So I wasn't mad at it, but I was a little surprised.
Yeah, Hallie, this felt a little paint by numbers to me. Like we do get the my old dog Lucius, all the references that we get, to to the things that he does. So, did you like seeing Willie come back for the first time in a few years?
I did. I think I liked it because it had been a good amount of time. It's been long enough that it felt like I was pulling distant memories out of the back of my head. Of course, I remember this character, and I remember kind of the rhythm of the writing and his bits, but I feel like everything ever has happened in the last 4 years, which gave it enough time to come back and still feel fresh. There were parts of this that I found to be like, yeah, that's what you would expect from this character. And there's some parts that like I found myself really caught off guard by and laughing out loud, like the hitting Lorne with the vehicle bit. That took me out a little bit. That was maybe the hardest I laughed at Weekend Update. But I think they timed this reappearance well, which I think is kind of a hard thing to do in terms of characters and when to bring them back and when enough time has passed that it's going to feel fresh. It is crazy to me how season 46 adjacent this entire night has been. I don't think I connected those dots in my head until now, but that is a really crazy point, actually.
Yeah, it definitely felt like pretty throwbacky, including like I mean, I know Chloe was around in 46, so I don't mean to say that, but like no Chloe Fineman in the episode. I don't think Mikey Day appeared live from what I can remember. Obviously, I'll check the data on that, but did he?
Next sketch.
Oh, okay. My bad. Yeah. All right. We didn't get to it yet, so I forgot. But yeah. So like it was just like some weird. Oh yeah, of course in the first date sketch. But yes, there was some interesting weird tones tonight. Bill, is Willie Keenan's best character on the update desk?
Oh boy, I don't know. LeVar Ball was pretty good.
Impression though, like non-impression. Is Willie Keenan's best character on the update desk?
Then probably yes. Yeah, I was going to also say Barkley too, but yeah, no, yeah, it might be his best character.
Yeah, obviously done a lot. David Ortiz at the update desk as well. But I think that if you ask Keenan, he may say that this is his most prolific update character. So that would be an interesting debate. I'm a Jean-K Jean guy personally, but yeah, this was it was good to see Willie back just for old time's sake. Okay, but yes, you did allude to it. So Mikey and Sarah are on their first date, and nothing has gone wrong. Everything is completely normal. Not one strange thing has happened, except every single person in the restaurant is bald. Isn't that weird? And we get this wide shot of like 30 bald men hanging out in the restaurant. We see Keenan and Bill and Bowen and Judge and Andrew. And it turns into this giant song. So we get we got a Mulaney musical last week, and we get the Bald Men musical this week, singing "We Are Bald Men. This is true. We can do all the things that you can do." And it turns into some really fun choreographed dances, some really great shots from the control room where we get to look over them. We get to see them appear in other shots, and it just Michael Longfellow will come in at one point as a monk with the cantaloupe, but like, I'm not doing justice the craziness of this sketch. They just were like, hey, how do we make, like, this is to Bill Kenney's point tonight, how do we make the episode after Trump gets reelected one of the craziest episodes? So let's just do a giant sketch on bald men. Bill, your thoughts on this one?
Have we mentioned that this is a throwback episode for all ages here? Like this is something you would have seen in 1990. Like this is, people breaking out in song in a bar for no particular reason other than the fact that it's, 30 bald men in a bar. Yeah, this was so fantastic. This is going in the Criterion collection for the season so far for me. So bonkers. Beat after beat just got more and more ridiculous. We got to see so many different people. I love there were just so many, like, even subtle moments like Bowen and Jaj like having their heads leaned against each other in baldness. Was so great. And then, like, you've got Mikey and Sarah in the background, just kind of by the end, just giving into it and clapping along and enjoying everything that was going on in this crazy bar. Love this one. This was great. I can't wait to go back and watch this one.
It was so absurd. It was so stupid. Like, it felt like everything you would see in a 10-to-1, but you can't put it in a 10-to-1 because there's so much production that needs to be done. Like, this needs to be done right after update because you got to put the bald caps on all the non-bald performers. But also the fact that they like basically booked like 25 bald extras and brought them in. Like, they're like, okay, we're calling all of our New York bald men. This is your moment, bald men. Come into Saturday Night Live. We got the perfect sketch for you. Halle, did you like this one?
Oh, I loved this one. I think there's a recurring theme showing up in my sketch opinions, which is that I am beginning to, more so than ever, just love the absurdity. I think this season has been such a good season for just insane sketches. And I had a similar reaction to this one as I did to the firefighters one earlier in the episode, where it's like something weird's about to happen. I'm braced and ready. And somehow I was still completely caught off guard. There was nothing on this planet that could have prepared me in any way for the plethora of bald men about to appear out of nowhere. And I also am not always someone who thinks sketches need to have music in them. Sometimes I think there's a really good setup for a sketch and then it gets turned into a song and it's kind of detrimental. This, I think, was the perfect time to use a musical execution. It may be one of my favorite musical sketches of a while. I cannot think of a time period to give it, but a while for sure. I loved it. The just production and the effort that went into it, to wrangle that many bald men and to put that many bald caps on men who were not previously bald, is just a level of commitment, and it paid off a lot. And it kept me engaged the entire time. I didn't get tired of the bald men. I wanted more of the singing and dancing of the bald men. So this was up there for me. This was another peak of the episode.
This almost felt like a sketch that in other times would have been turned into a pre-tape of just, two people having it, like sitting at, a table at a restaurant having a date, and then the, like bald person walks by bald, and then they realize that there's so many bald people and it just turns into like a giant song about bald people. And I do love music videos. Music videos were the crux of one of my favorite eras of Saturday Night Live. But the fact that they did this live and made it so much stupider, and like that is truly everything I could have wanted on a week like this, is to get something extremely silly that I cannot wait to send to people. So call all of your bald friends, get them on the phone. This is for them. So I cannot wait to rewatch. This is the one, there's a lot of great stuff here tonight. This is the one I'm most excited to rewatch before I go to bed, just to get myself another great laugh. And I have a feeling this is going to be one of those like fan favorite like sketches that gets talked about a lot for years to come. Okay. Then we head over to the trauma therapy group, where Jane, Bowen, Ashley, Bill, Emil, and Jadge are sitting around for some trauma therapy. And Bowen, who's playing Samuel, is the only one who hasn't shared yet. He starts talking about the different things that have been really hard for him, but they're so like innocent and benign, like how Tuesday was really hard for him, but it wasn't about the election. It was about voting for The Voice, an old episode of The Voice where Adam Levine was still a coach, how he's locked out of his Tubi account. When other people share, he interrupts them. He ends up going to eat like I noticed the prop behind them. There's like 100 donuts. And I was like, why is there so many donuts? And then he ends up going to eat all of them. He burns Ashley with a cigarette and then burns Bill after he talks about how his wife exploded. So this is a Bowen character piece where he's playing this Samuel guy who is not so good at therapy. How do you feel about this one, Hallie?
I really liked this one, not nearly as much as I liked kind of the more absurd sketches of the night. But this one, like I said earlier, kind of an interesting undertone of like therapy and talking about your emotions. I feel like that kept popping up. I don't know what that says about anything, but that was kind of a recurring thing for the night. So I was like, wow, we're really just going for it again. I love this. I love that it gave the new cast members a little bit of an extra moment in this episode. I feel like it was a really good episode generally for them. I think Ashley's big scream when she got burnt caught me so off guard. It was so funny. And I mean, it was obviously funny to the rest of the cast because there was a little bit of a pause there. I thought this was a pretty well done sketch, and I really just like any chance to give the new cast members some extra time and to kind of showcase some different stuff from them. And I think this was a really good one for Ashley. And just the small, there were a lot of like small single lines that got me. Like the Tubi lines really took me out. I don't know if it's just because Tubi's a funny word, or if it was Bowen's delivery of that. But I think this one wasn't super like impactful to the episode as a whole, but was a pleasant sketch to be watching for me.
Bill, how'd you feel?
Yeah, I was a little concerned at the beginning that this was just going to be, beat by beat. My dog died, and then we're going to cut to Bowen talking about his phone charger sucking and things like that. And it did kind of linger in that, plateau. But by the end, again, yeah, everybody's mentioning Ashley, how great that was. But I do love Bill at the very end talking about his wife at Christmas Eve 2004 and her exploding and him not knowing whether or not it was a mine or the fact that she had had too many Mentos and Diet Coke. Like, I don't know why, but that was just such a great escalation at the very last minute that kind of saved the sketch for me. This was pretty good for this late in the night, so I did enjoy it.
You took the words right out of my mouth. I really felt like this sketch was not working until the end because it was giving me, when people were talking about their normal, normal's relative, but their traditionally normal things that they would go to therapy for. And then Bowen is talking about the things that are so innocuous that he would be there for. It was just okay for me. Like, I get what they were going for, but it didn't fully click. But then when you have somebody else who's there for an absurd reason, and Bowen is the character that's also absurd, but in a different way, and is attacking the other absurd person and hitting him with a cigarette and being like, no, I'm the only one in the group that could be here for absurd reasons. That to me is when the sketch turned around. So I feel like, it didn't fully work. But there was enough here that I really felt like there was the makings of a good sketch, and I feel like they could workshop this and perhaps bring it back with the character. I feel like this is one of this is a good Bowen character for me that I really enjoyed getting to see from him tonight. So yeah, feeling decent about that one. Maybe if I had to rank this in a really strong night, maybe the lowest live sketch for me of the night, but still had something there. Like, there was no sketch that full on bottomed out for me. Let's go ahead to the final sketch of the night, where we have an Ashley Padilla starring sketch where Bowen, Ego, Bill, Ashley, Heidi, Keenan are all sitting at a restaurant. Keenan is the big boss who pays for the entire table. They all tell jokes and they schmooze it up with Keenan. And it goes over to Ashley, who they say is, doesn't really tell the best jokes, but she starts talking about how she has 4 gorgeous dogs that come home from the park and it stinks in here. And if it wasn't one of us, it wouldn't smell like that. And like, that is the line of the joke. and it just doesn't work for anybody. She ends up telling the story again. We get the whole "it sure wouldn't smell like that" again, and it all comes around with Bill retelling the story but telling the joke properly, and Ashley walks away all upset because she's the one who wanted to tell the joke. We've been waiting for Ashley Padilla to have a moment where she can show off her chops. Comes from the Groundlings. We're really excited to get to see what she can do on the show. This is her first starring moment in a sketch. She's been the B roll or the C roll in a bunch of sketches, but now we get the A roll from her here. So, Bill, how do you feel like Ashley did?
Ashley did fantastic, and I am, beyond being an SNL fan, I'm a Groundlings guy. Like the people that I've loved the most on SNL have almost exclusively come from the Groundlings. Obviously, there's been fantastic people from all walks and Second City and things like that. But the people I have kind of gravitated towards in my history with the show have come from the Groundlings. And so I've been waiting for this moment with Ashley. We got a little piece of it with the Michael Keaton at the end of that episode with where she was playing the wife. But yeah, as you said, it wasn't the starring role. So even though this sketch isn't great, her performance is really fantastic, and she kind of makes a meal out of what's not a whole lot there. There were a couple of funny lines, but the repeating of it didn't really work for me. But again, like Ashley is the reason that anything worked in this.
Okay, well, that's I agree with you. I want to address Ragtime Bear in the chat, who says this great comment. I saw Ashley do "I Got One" at Groundlings, and she played it as an old woman. It was interesting to see the changes for SNL. She played it as an old lady, and she did a really crazy voice. Wonder why they pulled that back. So I just want to get that clarification from Ragtime Bear, our friend in the chat. Was it the same sketch, but it was just played as an older woman? What were the main differences of that? Because I always really find it fascinating when someone brings a sketch from outside of the show, brings it into the show, especially from a sketch troupe, because we've had so many stand-ups on the show over the last few years. We haven't had this in modern times as much, to have a new cast member bring some of their material over and see how it translates. So for me, this is one of those things that like I have a hard time evaluating whether it's good or bad, and more I'm just so fascinated with evaluating, okay, does this cast member work? They basically went from like the AAA to the majors here. Like, are they going to start hitting? And I felt like she was really good in this one. Did it fully come together for you, Hallie?
It did not entirely come together for me. I think I have the same sentiment as most of what you guys have said and what I'm seeing in the chat about Ashley was phenomenal in this. And it's really interesting to me to think about how it originated as her playing it kind of as an old lady with a little bit more of a like crazy voice aspect to it, because I think that might have made it work more for me. I think had there been that extra layer to it, I might have been a little bit more invested, but it didn't really come together to me. I understand the point was the repetition, but to have something so repetitive so late in the night when energy is already kind of a little bit lower, people are getting a little bit sleepy, it didn't really work for me. But I'm really looking forward to seeing more of Ashley, because I think every sketch she's in, she has been such a phenomenal performer, but there hasn't really been one yet that has tied it all together in a little bow. Like, she's performing well, and the sketch also works really well for me. So I'm hoping we get that soon. And I was really happy to see her performance in this sketch. It made me feel really, really optimistic about seeing her in future sketches for sure.
I don't know why they always, in the last, I'd say like year-ish, they leave some of these restaurant sketches for the end of the night. It's like a weird thing. Like they did that in the Michael Keaton episode a couple episodes ago. We got a restaurant sketch at the end of the night. Obviously, Lisa from Temecula was left for the end as well. It's just like it's a weird setting. Like they go to like sometimes offices or restaurants seem to be like this grounded universe where someone could do something very weird. I like that Ashley brought this into the show and that they gave her an opportunity on a week like this to try it out. I thought that it was decent. I'm very fascinated again by the choice to turn her character from an older woman to just one of the coworkers, because I think you lose a layer from this character, perhaps, where at least from the perspective of like, oh, she's older and doesn't get what's going on, and that's why she can't tell a joke. There's something more there without her just being like bad at joke telling. So I'm wondering, I would love to be able to, like, if there's some video version or YouTube version of her performing this sketch at the Groundlings and somebody has it, please send it our way on social media at the SNL Network, because I'd love to be able to see this, to be able to talk about this more on Monday night. But overall, really happy for you, Ashley Padilla, that you got this on the show, and you should be celebrating and having a few drinks tonight that you got your sketch on the show. Okay. Let's talk about what was cut from the night. While I do that, I really would love if Bill and Hallie and everyone in the chat can think about how they want to rate this fascinating Saturday Night Live out of 10. So I'll start with Weekend Update. I forgot to mention that Sarah Sherman was the cut piece from the update desk tonight. Peanuts, the squirrel that I think was an Instagram sensation, she was playing Peanuts' wife, Hazelnut, complete with the tail and everything there. So that was a big in the news recently. So unfortunately, we did not get to see Sarah Sherman's Peanuts' wife, Hazelnut, at the update desk tonight. We got 3 sketches and then a pre-tape. So I'll tell you about the 3 sketches that were cut. One was New Girlfriend, where we had Bill, Heidi, Andrew, Mikey, and Ego. Bill sees a photo of Andrew's girlfriend during a game night and likes her and can't stop talking about her, obsessed to the point of jealousy for Heidi. Then we have a tailor sketch where Marcelo is a tailor, Bill is a customer, Sarah and Emil are other tailors, and Ashley is another employee. The tailors fit Bill and call him fat and feel parts of his body. At one point in the dress version, Bill misspeaks, calls Emil and Marcelo Danny DeVito, and Marcelo catches that ad lib and ended up riffing on it. Really peaked at dress. So we are wondering if that may be posted as a cut for time at some point this week. The third one is a rafting lesson sketch where Heidi had a character that was cut from the Iowa Debris episode that she brought back this week, was also cut. She's now teaching water rafting with Bill to Chloe. So that was the only Chloe Feynman appearance. It's possible that Chloe was out filming some other projects this week, and that's why she only appeared in this one sketch that ended up getting cut from the night. Also featured Devin, James, Ego, Sarah, and Bowen. And then the pre-tape that was cut from the night, not SNL Midnight Matinee, not Please Don't Destroy, not SNL Digital Short, but we get an SNL cartoon that was cut from the night called Creation of New York. And there was voices by Michael Longfellow and Bowen Yang, creating a map for New York with rules like, chaotic streets at the bottom and then some straight lines. There's no 4th Avenue and smells like urine and all the trees in Central Park, etc. So a Creation of New York cartoon that never showed up on the show tonight. Perhaps we do get that in the future. All right, Bill, a lot of anticipation for this episode tonight. How are you going to rate it out of 10?
I think I'm going to go 7.5 out of 10, and that's grading on a curve because I feel like this is like top 5 moment in the history of the show for me where I didn't know what I was going to get, and I was, as I said, I was anxious, I was nervous, and I think they mostly delivered in a way that I wasn't sure they were going to be able to. So it gives me hope for as we move on in the season. So I'm going to go a little bit higher here and say 7.5.
Hallie, how do you feel about the night?
I'm going to go for a 6, I think, which in my book is by no means a bad thing. It's above average. I just don't think compared to what we've seen the rest of the season, this episode ranks among the top for me. And I do think a big part of that is just the general vibe of the week. There's no denying this week was crazy, all around, just absolutely bonkers. And like we talked about a lot, there was obviously like some landmines that writers had to try to avoid, kind of trying to figure out what are we going to do with the things that we can't really address. So I think they did a good job considering everything going on right now, but just as a whole, the episode didn't stand out to me in any extraordinary way. It wasn't bad, but it definitely isn't something I think I'm going to find myself thinking about in the future, like other episodes this season have been.
Yeah, I feel like I'm probably at 7. maybe I could be talking to 7.5. I'm feeling pretty good about the night. This was a really fun episode of the show for me. Yeah, I'm going to go 7.5. I'm going to settle on it because for me, the cold open was extremely impressive. I had all types of dread for what we may see and what I may have to talk about here with all of you. And I was so thrilled with the cold open here tonight. And then I felt like there was so many sketches tonight that just tried something different. It felt so refreshing that they went in different directions. Was there any all-time classics? I mean, maybe that bald sketch we're gonna go back to. So perhaps and the calling the dad sketch was a sketch that I've been like asking them for to get that tone on the show a little bit more. So for me, I think 7.5 is the right way to go here. I do feel, Halle, that this episode was consistent with the season that we've been getting. It felt different. The episode, like you wouldn't necessarily know this was a season 50 episode, but I feel like the quality of the show has been good. And it is a really good thing for a season that is doing well to have multiple good episodes that feel like completely different tone wise. And that's why I'm feeling really strong about season 50 so far. I said, I think on the By the Number show on Wednesday, that I think that in this era of 48, 49, 50, that season 50 has had the strongest start. And I maintain so far, I think season 50 has been the best of the last few. We'll see if that could continue to ride that momentum, but so far so good. And I can't wait to talk about it even more on Monday night when we are back here for our roundtable. I'll have some special guests with me on Monday to break down this episode even further and talk about the decisions that Saturday Night Live made in this episode. Mike will be back with By the Numbers on Wednesdays to talk through all the stats and analytics and the power rankings from Bill Burr and Mk.gee's episode of Saturday Night Live. We will also have our patron show out exclusively for patrons, the SNL exclusive sketch breakdown, where you can vote on that on Monday at patreon.com/the SNL network. And that will be out on Thursday over at Patreon. We also just released everything you need to know about Saturday Night Live season 16, and we got season 17 coming up real soon. So stay locked into the YouTube channel to get more content just like that. Bill Kenney, thanks for joining us tonight. Anything that you would like to plug to the listeners?
Yeah, thanks for having me, John. This was cathartic in a lot of different ways to be able to come on and enjoy this episode and talk about it with you guys. You can follow me on a couple of different social medias. I will be leaving one that's owned by a crazy man, but I am on Blue Sky and on Instagram at BKLove73.
Wow. All right. Making the move. Halle, thank you for joining us as well. Please tell the listeners where they can check you out if you would like to.
I'm not super active on any of my socials, but keep listening to the podcast. Keep doing all of the things. It has been so much fun to be back on the podcast, and I feel honored to have been asked to be here tonight. So it's been really great and really good after a crazy week to kind of talk about this episode, get to watch the episode. It was kind of something all week I was looking forward to. And I feel good. It was definitely a mood lifting event after the craziness of the last week. So thank you everyone who's listening, and thank you, John, for having me, and thank you, Bill, for being awesome as always.
Of course, Halle. So happy to have you. And I know I said this on the roundtable when you were on a few weeks ago, but just like so cool for me to have Halle on the show with us. For those who don't know, Halle was one of the first interns that ever worked for the Saturday Night Network back in the day. And when we first started these hot take shows or post-show recap shows that we did back then, Halle used to take notes during the show and send them over to me to help me produce the show. So like to have her on here a few years later, so proud of you and so happy to have you on the show with us and looking forward to more. So very, very cool stuff. If you want to follow anything we're doing on social media, whether you stay on those social platforms or not, our accounts are there. So you can follow us Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, X at the SNL Network. We did join Blue Sky just to have the account over there. So maybe we'll get that more active. We're on Threads as well. So you can find us all over the place at the SNL Network. And you can subscribe to the podcast on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, and Spotify to never miss anything going on here at the SNN. We want to thank LateNighter.com for being our presenting partner for our show tonight. Thank you to Bill and Halle for joining us, everyone behind the scenes who worked on our social media this evening, and everyone in the chat for hanging out with us late on this Saturday night. My name is Jon Schneider from the Saturday Night Network, and we will see you next time, everybody. Have a good one.